Good evening, my name's Tony Moore. Now, let's talk music. And our subject this evening is management and managers. Starting on the left, we have Lionel Martin. Why does an artist need a manager?
The first job of a manager is to help an artist develop into what he or she wants to become. So that could involve working on songwriting, that could involve working on their performance, that could involve styling, that could involve attitude. That's the first stage.
And how do you feel? Do you think you can become very successful and not need a manager, or do you think an artist should always have a manager?
I think a manager should, an artist should, a manager should have a manager.
Yes.
That's a good one. And an artist should
have a
manager too, yes. Because I think that as an artist becomes more successful, that's when they really do need more help. Yeah. And I think there's always room to raise the bar higher, and you need a manager to help you do that, because I think some artists get to a point where they think they've achieved everything, and as a manager you can see lots of holes and lots of places where they could develop further.
Howard, in Malta, is the role of a manager similar to the role of a manager that would be in the UK or America, or do you have to take different responsibilities?
Well, I mean, it's just another territory. It's a very small territory. But first of all, we entirely depend on export if you want success of a certain level. So in that case, you definitely need manager to take care of that, meetings, popcorn, and all that. But I mean, even locally here, as Lionel and Anne rightfully said, when you get to a point when an artist, you know, you need to take the bar higher, and you need to challenge the artist more, and you need to just go for another level, we call it.
So Kim, bad management. Have you ever had any bad management?
Well,
Can we say this on television?
I've had a long career in the industry, and you know, I've had different types of managers. I've had some managers where I didn't totally relate to, and they didn't totally see the vision for me.
And do you think the right manager can make an artist's career?
Definitely, definitely the right manager.
I mean, you grew up in Gary, Indiana.
Yes.
And your next door neighbours were the Jackson 5.
Well, the Jackson 5.
Now, they did quite well, didn't they?
They did very well. Their father kind of led them, and he was very strict on giving them a certain sound, and he knew that they should kind of go toward the Motown sound, and Motown was very near to Gary in Detroit, and he drilled them every day. They practiced, and they just really, the music became tight, the songs got tight, and the image was tight, but that was from a lot of commitment, a lot of discipline, and you had to listen. And if they didn't listen, then, you know,
there was trouble, was there?
They had to answer to the manager.
I mean, it seems to be we have a world where the superstar artists aren't really happening anymore. I mean, bands like the Jackson 5, you know, still make headlines because they made some of the greatest pop and dance records ever. Yeah. And there was a work ethic there, and there was a commitment to their career there. And is that something you think a manager should take responsibility for?
Absolutely, but there's only so much a manager can do. And if an artist doesn't want to listen and gets too big and considers he or she knows better, and the manager says the wrong thing, the manager gets fired.
Now, because there are some managers out there that
quite often.
Certainly in the 60s and the 70s, going back to people like Don Arden and Peter Grant, who carved out a career by being quite ferocious managers, didn't they? I mean, there's you know, stories of Don Arden holding people by their ankles out of the window when they've had an argument with them.
My office was opposite.
Was your office? Did you see it happen?
I wasn't there that day. In those days, people were making up the rules. You know, the industry was new.
But on the other hand, Peter Grant maybe changed the face of generating income for artists on the live circuit. He was renowned for being able to walk into a venue and almost to a man work out how many people were in that room.
And had to be like that because he dealt with promoters who were less than honest.
We need to take a commercial break, and we're going to let you see some adverts, and whilst you're looking at the adverts, as usual, we promise not to talk about anything important until you come back. So we will see you in about 3 minutes after this. We want want to tell you about Second Life, and Second Life is an online virtual world that we simulcast our show into every single week. And I think if you look at, yes, we'll look at the monitor here, you can see what it looks like in the studio. There's the Let's Talk Music stage set, there's our panel there. Everything we say in here is being simulcast into the virtual world, and we are going to be taking questions from Second Life back here. Okay, we're going to take a question from our studio audience here, as we do every week, and we've got a lot of people in the audience who are keen to ask questions. So we're going to start with Paula. Whereabouts is Paula? Paula, down there, looking gorgeous in the pink. Paula, what's your question?
Thank you very much. What percentage should a manager take from the artist's percentage? And also, should it be on gross or net monies received?
Well, Paula, it sounds like you've been doing a bit of research on this, net or gross receipts. Lionel, you're the man of accounting. What would your answer to that be?
There's a very charismatic manager called Ed Bicknell, who I'm sure won't mind me mentioning him, who managed Dire Straits. And I remember him saying that he was really fed up with the artist taking 80% of his earnings. So historically, managers have taken something like 15–20% of artists' gross earnings. And then horrible people like me came along, and other accountants and lawyers, and suggested that wasn't very fair and that they should take a percentage of net earnings. So you obviously know something about the industry that you've asked that question.
We've got a question here from Second Life, and Nomad Rovio, hello Nomad, wherever you are in the world, you're in the Vault Theatre sharing this experience, and his question, I think I'm going to ask you, Kim, because he says, how do you measure a manager's performance?
Well,
as an artist,
as an artist with me, like I said, there needs to be a same page. We need to be on the same page psychologically, and need to be going toward the same goal.
You can see commercial success. That must be a good measure. That they do something and it provides income and success. But underneath that, you've got to feel comfortable, haven't you?
You have to feel comfortable, and also, you know, sometimes you may not see anything going on. Something may not be happening, and it may be happening behind the scene, but you don't see any progress. So you have a bit of trust going on there. So you have to just call and say, "Oh, well, what's going on?" You know, well, actually, I've been working on this, working on that. I didn't think that was good enough for you, so we turned that down. And then you go like, "Okay."
If you want to ask a question during the show, send us an email in. You can also send an SMS text message, and you use the number 50615010. I'm trying to remember that, of course, because the camera's right in front of it right now, but just behind you, sitting on the sofa there, it's written up on the wall, I'm sure. We're going to take another question, and Eric, in the audience, what would you like to ask them?
Yes, there have also been cases of managers being responsible for turning the music scene upside down. Two classic cases come to my mind, Brian Epstein of the Beatles and Malcolm McLaren of the Sex Pistols. Do you think that in this present day and age, such a situation could come up with the present state of management in the music scene?
Interesting question, Eric. Actually, some kind of pivotal moments in the music industry preempted by a manager who kind of just either felt the moment or created the moment. Are we in an age where that can happen anymore? Lionel, what do you reckon? You've known you represented the Sex Pistols, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I think probably more so than ever. I think if ever there's been a time for an entrepreneurial manager with flair, it's now, because record companies are doing very little at the moment. So it's all down to the manager and the artist to look after their own business. So I think the Brian Epstein example is probably a great one. I mean, he was such an influence on the whole industry that we work in. He was the fifth Beatle.
Strangely enough, this afternoon whilst we were getting ready for the show, Kim, we were talking about Elvis, weren't you? And Colonel Tom Parker, his manager.
Oh, yes.
Tell us this story, because when Elvis was first starting out and people didn't really know him, what did the Colonel do?
Well, Elvis really, in his own mind, thought he was really, really famous, but actually he wasn't. What the Colonel would do is he would get loads of people to stand outside of the hotel or stand outside of the airport and just create a buzz. And when he would come out, people would just scream, "Hi, Elvis, can I have your autograph?" And it just kind of spread into an Elvis frenzy, which, I mean, now later has created his whole career and established him as the king and all of this, but it was a manager.
And he didn't know?
And he didn't know. He had no idea.
Okay, so Anne, if you were managing me, would you pay lots of people to stand outside and scream when I left the studio to make me feel like I'm a star?
I don't think that would have to happen with you, Tony, somehow.
We all feel like you, that there's probably an opportunity to do it, and everyone's kind of doing it in smallish ways. Maybe one of these things is just going to catch a fire and and create a whole gen. Maybe it's from Second Life. We have a Second Life audience here. We have Second Life musicians who are touring Second Life without leaving their front room. We've done really well so far. We're getting to the very final part of the show where we're going to have some live music. And our guest performer for the end of the show is Kim Bazell, who is going to do the Grammy-nominated album soundtrack version of 10 million albums selling track of Young Hearts Run Free, and she's got the kind of she's got the invisible band helping her, and she's got a very visible keyboard player who's going to sit in and try and help her right now. So you've been a fantastic audience. Thank you for joining us and staying with us. And after the show finishes, do stick around for Straight to the Point and Ira Losco. In the meantime, big round of applause to everybody and Kim Bazell, ladies and gentlemen.
You guys want to stand up and dance with me? You live audience. Come on, Walter, put your hands together. Come on.
Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah, yeah. What's the sense in sharing this one and only life? Ending up just another lost